Hi, everybody, and welcome to Grow to Scale Your Business. My name is Marina, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Justin Foote. Justin Foote is an RCIC agent. And if you don't know what it is, or consultant, if you don't know what it is, then let me tell you, regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Yes, today's episode is about the Canadian employers market. And I'll tell you in a second what it's all about and how we came to this interview. But to tell you a little bit about Justin is the owner of Just Right Immigration. He has two functions that he fills, and they're incredible and extremely helpful, both for employers and for other consultants. They're looking to become bigger, better, and help more people in the world. So Justin educates employers across Canada on how to integrate foreign workers into their growth strategies. Very difficult to find good workers right now, and this is one of the strategies to do that. And the second thing he does, he taught and teaches hundreds of RCIC, regulated Canadian immigration consultants, on how to run their own immigration practices, how to grow and scale their practices to get to the level of his own. Welcome, Justin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. Excited to be here.
I'm so excited. You have no idea. So we met at a networking event and we started chatting, and immediately something that you said triggered a memory of a customer I was talking to. And one of the challenges he had is hiring, training, and retaining good employees in his auto repair shop. And the first thing that came to mind when I was talking to him is, have you ever considered hiring foreign workers on a work visa? And he said, I didn't know it's a thing. So I said, oh my God, how could you not know that? You live in Canada and there are a lot of immigrants around you. And then I realized nobody's talking about it. So I said, okay, I gotta find somebody that will help me communicate and educate the Canadian business owner, the small business owners in Canada, because larger businesses usually don't tackle it unless they're in a certain industry. And here we go. We have Justin. Hey, thank you for joining us. So Justin, tell us, how did you start? And then let's tackle some tough questions about the topic.
Sure. So I ended up getting into this industry about 8 years ago. I was a junior partner in a much bigger firm for about 5 years. And I was responsible for all the production in that firm. So essentially, when it came to doing the applications, I was selling the applications, talking to the employers, actually completing the applications, and then doing all of the back end work after submitting it to the government for assessment. So I did that for a very, very long time, and I focused on helping Canadian employers get that clearance to hire their foreign workers. And then I helped those foreign workers to get their work visa so they can actually land on Canadian soil and begin working for that employer. So I did that for quite a while. Afterwards, I parted ways with the bigger firm, and I started my own immigration consulting business now 2 years ago, called Just Right Immigration, where, as you correctly pointed out, Marina, that I focus on helping Canadian employers with getting the clearance to hire those foreign workers. And I also teach newer regulated Canadian immigration consultants on how to just be the best that they can possibly be at their job. So that's kind of where I started, and I continue to do it this day. It's super rewarding, and I love it. So I'm hoping that to do it for a very, very long time.
Fantastic. So what are some of the biggest challenges employers in the service industry, or basically in any industry, face when they're trying to recruit employees locally?
Yes, so there are a couple things that they're facing right now. One of the things that's really, really big, especially in industries like manufacturing or hospitality, you're looking at retention at this point. So when I say, manufacturing and hospitality, I'm not talking the high-end management jobs. I'm not talking, the office jobs. I'm talking the types of jobs where you're a general laborer, or you're a food counter attendant, or you're a food service supervisor. Yes, you're a supervisor, but you're still on the ground. You're still at the restaurant. You're still these jobs. They're not. Let's just be blunt. They're not glamorous,
They're
right?
not sexy.
Yeah, exactly, right? And particularly to the Canadian workforce now, it's really undesirable, right? We live in a culture now with, and this is just my opinion, obviously, but I'm finding that, and I'm a millennial, so I'll talk about millennials, okay? We have this, I don't know, preconceived notion that we finish high school, go to college, graduate, and then boom, we got our six-figure job, we got a corner office on the top floor, we got a title like CEO. That's how the real world works, right? Wrong. That's not how the real world works. You're going to start as a junior something or other, and you're going to work your way up, and you're not going to have a corner office. You'll be lucky if you have a cube. Now, as you know, don't mean to be depressing about it, but that's the reality of work, and I don't think that's really changed much in
Totally.
2024 at least, right?
Yeah.
But you now have a bunch of workers that have an expectation that's so high that the average employer just it's impossible to meet that. So what they do is they will hire on, have that expectation that's way up here, then they will work a couple shifts, work maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months if you're lucky.
I didn't make a change yet and they quit.
Get disillusioned super quick.
Yeah.
And realize, oh, this is not good. Where's my six-figure salary? Okay. And then they quit.
Yeah.
And what's worse is not only do you not have an employee anymore, but those weeks or months of training that you invested into them, that goes with them, right? So you're kind of, it hits you twice, right? And employers say it's like the problem that they're having, they're telling me, they're saying, hey, I can hire from time to time, but they don't stay. And what's worse is they take my training that I gave them with them. And even worse, they go across the street and take that training to my competitor's restaurants and work for him, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest challenges. It's just retention in this market of workers, right? With that sort of disillusionment, right, of young workers, of this workforce right now. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
So how hiring foreign workers can alleviate these recruitment challenges and retention challenges?
Absolutely. So there are many benefits to this. So first off, with a Canadian worker, a permanent resident worker, okay, there's not anything really on the line. Now I get it, you got a paycheck, you need to have a job. There's that on the line. So okay, I'm not saying there's nothing on the line, but it's very easy for a Canadian to do exactly what I just said. It's just, hey, you know what? I don't like this job anymore. I don't want to be here. I quit. That's it. They just drop everything and they quit. And you're lucky to get 2 weeks, by the way, 2 weeks notice. Most of the time, especially in the hospitality industry, they just stop showing up for shifts. It's called quiet quitting, right? And that's a major problem you're going to experience with Canadian workers because it's just not that motivation. There's this thought where it's just like, hey, I can go anywhere else and get the same paycheck. It's all good, right? There's nothing bigger on the line. With foreign workers, they are invested, and I'll tell you why. First off, they do not have the ability, and this is very important that most employers don't know, they do not have the ability to just quit and go across the street and work for your competitor. They are locked in. When they get their work visa, they can only work for you in that position. They cannot drop everything and go, you know what, I don't like this anymore. I'm going to go across the street to your competitor. They can't do that. Okay. So that's the first big advantage. Number two, they have something bigger on the line. And it's called Canadian permanent residence. I would say 95% of the workers that I help immigrate to Canada come with their families, usually families of 4, 2 children, and a married couple. Okay. And their bid for Canadian permanent residence rests on one big thing: keeping your job. So essentially, by quitting or doing a bad job at the position you've offered them, they're also quitting the country, essentially, for not only themselves, but their families. And these people want nothing more than to get permanent residence, not just for themselves individually, but for their children as well. They want a good education for their kids. And by quote unquote sponsoring them, you're giving them that opportunity. You know, Marina, in 8.5 years of doing this, I've only had 2 employees, temporary foreign workers, that didn't work out. One was because the timing didn't work out and they got homesick. Not much you can do about that. That happens. Number two, the person was just not performing properly. But I'll tell you this, that second person, they got a talking to by management, and they instantly became employee of the month for 12 consecutive months.
Yeah.
Because they understand what's on the line. So that's the big draw. That's the big advantage for employers.
It's also, if I may add to this, is that the people who are coming from maybe third world countries and to work for companies in positions that are less desirable in our mindset, in our criteria as local, as educated people, as somebody who, I don't want to say the word, but a lot of people who were born in Canada feel entitled to what they expect to get. And they feel entitled whether they deserve it or not, just by the privilege of being born in a free country that gives you opportunities. People who come from those countries, from third world countries that apply for these visas, apply for these work-based opportunities, they come with a different mindset. They come with the gratitude of being given the opportunity to change their lives, to change their lives, to change their life. I'm getting goosebumps. To change the lives of their families. And it's all about how they, they look at, I'm yelling, how they look at those jobs and those opportunities. Then the second person you used as an example, they might have not understood not only what is in line or at line by not performing well, but also they might not have understood the expectations of the company that hired them. Why? Because the culture is different, the expectations are different. So just by talking to them and explaining to them, listen, forget for a second what is at line on the line if you decide not to perform well, which is going back to your country of origin and your visa being canceled and probably not be able to apply again because you failed the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe get another opportunity or so. But if you do it this way, and if I give you the right tools, you will be more than successful. Not only that you will be successful at your current position, but if you work hard enough, you can get to higher and higher positions that can pay better. And if your family is not at stake, but if your family arrival or your family's success in this country is dependent on your salary, on your success and what you do, then you really, really want to do better. And you really want to evolve faster in your position.
You're absolutely right. And another point that you just made me think of that's really good for employers as well, for employers that are in rural areas, okay, not metropolitan areas, temporary foreign workers have no problems going out to rural areas. In fact, a lot of them prefer it because it reminds them of home, right? I've heard that, especially from Filipino workers that I've brought over here. They're like, we like to live out in the country just like that. And that's another bonus because I have companies I've worked with in places like Rosenor, Manitoba, for instance, right? And nice place, nothing wrong with it. It's just a really small community. It's very, very remote, right? Like it's a very rural community. And that's another challenge that employers are going to have, is that they need to, quote unquote, lure away younger workers, good workforce, away from the metropolitan areas. And we just don't want to do that. We want to stay in the big cities.
Right.
So that's definitely something to consider, especially because retention out there is so much more important because there's not that big of a pool to draw upon. You know what I mean?
And that's one of the reasons why the salaries in Nunavut or Northern Territories are so high, because it's impossible to fill the positions there. And the turnover is very, very high because people don't like living there. It's extremely cold. It's extremely remote. You're away from your family. Unlike immigrants that come in, they're already far away from their family. So living inside the city or outside of the city will not change that. Versus somebody who was born locally and has a family in the area, and suddenly they're torn away from it in order to go and work somewhere outside of the comfort zone. They're like, no, thank you. I'll just stay in here. And it's very difficult to fill those positions. So this is an amazing way to do that. Next question. What is the process of going through getting work visas and getting foreign employees into your company look like?
Okay, so it is quite an involved process. That's why I exist. That's why I help employers do this process. To summarize it quickly for your audience, essentially what the point of the program is, it's called the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. And the main goal of that program is to ensure that every employer that wants to hire foreign workers has done everything in their power, reasonably obviously, to try and hire a Canadian first. And they want proof of that. So part of that piece is advertising for the position in a certain way, interviewing Canadian applicants, providing a bit of a feedback or spreadsheet of who you've interviewed and reasons why you can't find a Canadian for a job. Just very reasonable stuff like that, right? It just takes time and you have to do it in the way that the government of Canada wants you to do it. So the first part of every application is sitting down with me or another licensed professional to determine, first off, what you need, not necessarily what you want. And that's a big piece that immigration consultants have to do all the time, because I've had people come in and employers and that completely innocent. They think they need this. And they go, hey, I had a good example. It was a motorboat repair shop, and they wanted a marine mechanic. And after asking them a few questions, walking them through the day-to-day for this position, I realized that and informed them that they don't need a marine mechanic. They need a small engine motorboat mechanic. Now you might go, well, Justin, what difference does that make? It's just a silly title. Well, it's a silly title maybe, but it makes about a $15 an hour difference in terms of how much they have to pay. So that's the first part, determining exactly what you need as an employer, and then picking out the proper job or proper position for that. Then we need to determine what your wage tolerance is going to be for that position. And once we determine that, we can go to the government website and we can say, okay, this is the type of job that position that you want to offer. This is your budget. Let's see if we can find a match in the government system. Once we do, I help you design the ads. We post the ads in the required channels. We gather the applicants. We go through that process of interviewing them or not interviewing any of them. If their resumes don't look good, it's completely up to you as an employer. And then I help with filling out the rest of the paperwork. They'll ask you things like, what's your business number? What do you primarily do with the business? All of that fun stuff, along with the advertising results. And then we submit it for review by an immigration officer at the Government of Canada. There is an interview process. So think about it as in like you're applying for a job. It's funny how that works. It's like you're applying for a job, but you're the employer this time and you're being interviewed by the officer. And then I sit there with the employer as well, and I help with conducting the interview. usually takes about 10-15 minutes. And it's just to clarify a few minor details on the application. Sometimes there's not even an interview. Okay. Now, all that goes off, and there's a lot more to it. I'm giving you like a 100,000-foot view of it. Okay. There's a lot more detail in it, but that's all you see as an employer, right? And that's all you need to see. You're busy working on your business. You want to work on your business. That's where I handle stuff in the background. And that's why it's worth it to get a licensed.
Yeah, you have a problem, let me solve it for you. Don't worry about the details.
Exactly. And so if that all goes off good, then you get an approval for the amount of workers that you want. And then that is literally your ticket now to go to all of your potential foreign workers and your recruiting contacts overseas, if you have any, and start posting jobs there and recruiting workers. Now, to be very clear, I don't do recruitment. I just do the immigration consulting piece. I can recommend where you can go, people you can talk to. But what I like to do is I like to have the employer do the recruiting part because, Marina, I mean, it's obvious. I can't tell you how to run your business, right? Who's the best person that knows how to run your business and how to advertise for jobs for your business? You. You're the one who's going to qualify. You're the one who's going to vet the person, right? You're going to make sure they're a fantastic graphic designer. You're going to make sure they're a great food service supervisor because you have that expertise because it's your business. So they recruit the person, they find the person, then we engage them to get them a work visa, and here they are. They arrive in Canada and begin working for you for anywhere between 2 to 3 years. And with chance for extension as well, if they want to go for permanent residence or you need them for longer, that can be extended as well.
So to set expectations, how long does it usually take the process from engaging you until they get a worker?
So to actually have the worker on the ground working for you, you're looking anywhere between 6 to 8 months. Okay. And it's highly dependent on, of course, the government's workload. So how fast they're doing those temporary foreign worker applications. And then also the country that your worker's coming from. Every country has a different processing time for their visas, right? Because it's all done locally. So that will impact it. But generally, you're looking anywhere between 6 to 8 months. So it's a longer term investment, but the return on that investment over 2 to 3 years is phenomenal.
Are there any specific regulatory hurdles or common pitfalls employers should be aware of when they're sponsoring a foreign worker?
Absolutely. So there are a few. Okay, when you are sponsoring people, okay, you have to be very careful that you interview them properly and vet them properly, right? Because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. People want permanent residence in Canada, okay? And the fact that you have a job offer is like literally the golden ticket for them to get their permanent residence. So you run into an issue where people will literally say everything you want to hear just to get the job offer. But that's just the onus on you. You should be very good at what you do and you're able to vet these people, right? Licensing is very important. If they need a license, make sure you get a copy of that. If they need a specific type of education, make sure you get a copy of that. Just be very careful to vet because you don't want, I've never had it happen yet, thankfully, but you don't want to get a worker to come here and then you spend 6 to 8 months and then they land and they have no idea how to, for instance, drive a long haul truck, right? And you hired them to drive a long haul truck. It's going to be a bit of a problem. So be very careful with that. In terms of other regulations, it's actually not that bad. That's the only thing that I would recommend that you're careful with. Aside from that, you treat them just like any other Canadian worker. Okay, a lot of employers will ask me, hey, if something goes wrong, which, you know what, life is life, business is business, things can go wrong. They ask me, hey, can I fire them? Can I lay them off? The answer is yes, you can. It's literally treat them exactly like a Canadian worker, except for that one little piece where they have a visa. That's it.
To give an example, you were just talking, and I remembered a show that I watched on Amazon Prime, which is a reality show where they are, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it
The
Underwater?
90 Day Fiance?
No,
Okay.
with the yachts, when they are being chartered for like 2 or 3 day trips in Europe. They have it in Australia, all over
Okay.
the place. But the point is that the workers on those yachts are from all over the world.
Yes.
So, for example, if the yacht is being chartered in the Mediterranean, you can have somebody from Australia, from South America, from Canada, from US, whatever it is, and that crew has to provide their credentials to qualify to work on a boat. And
Mhm.
it's not a boat, it's a yacht. So it's luxury yacht. So one of the situations that happened was, it was actually on the first episode or the second episode of that season, where the bosun of the yacht, which is the one that manages the deck crew, falsified his credentials. And they are required, before they go and sail for the first time, they're required to go through all the qualification checkups by local authorities so that they qualify to operate the vessel in the international waters or the local waters. And as the captain was checking all the documents for all the employees, because she gets them in batches, right? She gets them in batches, they go on the deck, and then she starts checking them out. She started looking at it, and suddenly the documents did not fit the ID that he sent, and they didn't fit. Like, there was something with the name, with the picture on the ID, something did not click. And she said, I'm sure, she called him and she said, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Just send us the originals. We want the originals. And he had all these excuses. Oh, the originals are in South Africa and we're in the Mediterranean. Like, I can't get them. And she said, you know what? Get off the vessel, because I'm not allowed to have you on the vessel operating and managing the crew at this time. As soon as you provide me the documents, we can continue. You can come back on board and no problem. Guess what? He never provided documents, and they sailed for the first trip without him. He was fired. He was replaced by one of the crew members, and then they had to find a replacement. So that's to your point, where it's as a business owner, it's your responsibility to vet them very, very well. And unfortunately, there are a lot of amazing falsifiers and very creative resume writers, especially today with all the ChatGPT and all the automations. There is a difference between what is written in the resume and the reality of things.
That's right.
So make sure that you have the questions that you want to ask the person to prove not only their technical skills, but also ask them situational questions. Ask them, tell me about something, tell me about, or can you give me an example of, that will support whatever is written in the resume. And I do have like a script that you can use in ChatGPT, a prompt that you can use in ChatGPT in order to get a list of these questions. So I will share the link to it in the description below, so you can leverage it for your resume and your interviewing process.
That's great.
But make sure you do a good job, because you're either stuck with them or you just wasted 8 months of trying to recruit somebody who's not a good fit. And then you have to start the process all over again and pay.
Exactly.
It costs money. It's not free.
Yes, it costs money. It is definitely not free. But, and more to your point, remember that as an employer with this clearance to hire a foreign worker, like I said before, you got a golden ticket or a platinum ticket. Okay. So I'm not saying that you want to be, mean to anybody, but you want to highly scrutinize. Okay. And you don't be shy about it, because you know what's on the line. They know what's on the line. And if they're truly good at what they do and they are the right candidate, they will show that. I've had employers. I had a roofing client, an employer who's a roofing company here in the city. And in order to vet their workers from overseas, what they actually did is they got the potential foreign worker to provide them with a video of them actually doing different roofing techniques. Like, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I highly recommend that, especially for things like roofers, auto mechanics, carpenters. You should have a list of things that your carpenter is going to do and say, hey, here's a list of 10 things that carpenters do for me. Pick 5 and show me how you do them. It's a great way to vet.
Love it. It's what I do when I interview, for example, virtual assistants. I actually give them assignments. I don't want them to tell me, so I gotta do it like quickly. But here's a tip about how to hire a virtual assistant from overseas. And it's relevant to this as well. So when I put out a position online, I might get 300, 400, 500 applications. So it's impossible to go over 400 or 500 applications. But what I like to do is I like to ask them very specific questions and to give them an assignment to complete. Now, here's the thing. 99% of them will send you all their amazing experience and how great they are at what they're doing without reading the questions that I wrote or submitting the homework that I gave them in order to check what I want to check. So it means if they just submit how amazing they are and all the technology and all the software they used in the past without actually following my instructions, they're not a good fit, because I cannot work with somebody who cannot follow instructions. It means I will have to micromanage them. And I am not a micromanager. I have better things to do than to do my work and their work to make sure they're doing their work. So as they submit their applications, only the ones that followed my instructions, I will review their application. All the 400 and whatever others that submitted the application and did not follow instructions, I'm not even opening their application. I'm not reading it, and I'm not opening it. That's it.
It's a brilliant technique, and I've heard that being used before with other recruiting firms here in the city. I know one gentleman in particular. What he does is he puts in very specific instructions for exactly positions that you're talking about here that would obviously get a ton of applicants. And he does exactly the same. He's been in the recruiting industry for, gosh, 30 years now or so. So your method that you're suggesting here is tried true, and it works. It absolutely works. They'll say, hey, put in a cover letter, even something as simple as saying, put in a cover letter. And no one does that. Okay, and you didn't include a cover letter. I'm not even looking at your resume because I know you can't follow instructions. So that's a fantastic point.
But I can tell you that cover letters are useless. So it's just for the purpose of putting it to see that you're following instructions. But why? It's like the resume, it's cover letter. It's copy paste into it. I don't need it, but yes. That's one of the things. So next, let's hear from you a couple of success stories that you were able to place the right fit into a company and what were their accomplishments?
Absolutely. So I've worked with all sorts of different employers all across the country. The only place I don't do in the country is Quebec, because it's a totally different immigration system, and you need to be properly licensed for that. Also, it kind of helps to speak, read, and write French, which I can do none of those. So that's why I don't do Quebec. But across the rest of the country, and I've worked with doctors' offices. I've worked with manufacturing centers. I've worked with restaurants, even small ones like Tim Hortons, franchises like Subway. And this one particular client I had was out of a place in rural Ontario, north of Toronto, quite a bit north of Toronto, actually. And they were a cigarette manufacturer. Like I said, very, very rural, owned by an Aboriginal, by Aboriginal shareholders out there on treaty land, which is really nice. They provide a ton of jobs. Yeah. So they provide a ton of jobs to the Aboriginal community out there, and it's just a really great thing. What they manufacture is cigarettes, actually. So they have all these machines, multi-million-dollar machines that process cigarettes at lightning speeds. But of course, you need employees in order to operate these machines. Well, one of the machines, it's a tobacco sorting machine. I got to learn, and this is one of the benefits of my job, I get to learn a little bit about everybody's business and kind of become a mini expert in just a very, very small way. I'm never going to be the business owner, but I get to learn a lot about the inner workings of business.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And they had this machine that they had purchased that sorts this tobacco. Okay. It is a $1.5 million machine. It is sitting collecting dust in a warehouse for at least 7 months because they can't find anyone in Canada that can not only operate it, but service it. Now, not only are they losing money on a $1.5 million machine, but they could have 5 positions that would be worked by Canadians to operate that machinery if they had one person that could supervise and tell them how to use it properly and service the machine when it needed to be serviced. So lo and behold, they contact me and they're like, hey, we're looking for a very specific industrial mechanic that can work on this $1.5 million tobacco sorting machine. Well, sure enough, Marina, we found that person. They were very, very specific, highly qualified, actually worked for the manufacturer of the machine, took all the proper courses, and was an industrial mechanic. We brought him over. He was from, where was he from now? He's from Turkey, I believe. And we brought him over and his family. They settled in right away. And within a week, they had that machine, that $1.5 million machine, finally out of the warehouse and making some money for them. Finally getting some return on that investment. Not only that, but their staff, their existing Canadian staff, this guy was a superstar that we brought over. He knew this machine like anything, like the back of his hand. He was incredible. He managed to train several of their existing staff on how to maintain that machine. So not only did they solve the problem immediately, but they prevented it from being a problem in the future. So now they have several of these $1.5 million machines, all supervised properly, all making money and sorting tobacco like they're supposed to, instead of collecting dust in that warehouse. Now, with the worker, they did so well that they were promoted to a supervisory and then management position because of how skilled they are with the machines and being able to teach that to their existing staff. He actually just got permanent residence because he kept his job with that employer. He got his permanent residence for him, his 3 young children, and his wife. And they are happily living in Ontario as permanent residents now.
What a
It's a really
fantastic
good
story.
success story. I was
Incredible.
super happy.
Yeah.
And everyone was happy. And that's one of those scenarios where everybody wins. And I love stories like that. The employee won, the temporary foreign worker won, the employer got what they needed, they got their machines up and running. And it's success stories like that that make it really worthwhile what I'm doing.
That's fantastic. So how people learn about you? How do they find you? Because Ontario is not exactly Manitoba, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit further.
So you can find me online. I have a website, justrightImmigration.com. But the best way to connect with me, I always tell business owners, is through LinkedIn. As business owners, that's our primary hub, isn't it? And if you look, I got this QR code right here. If your viewers scan this QR code, it goes straight to my LinkedIn page. Connect with me and, leave me a little note and say, hey, I saw you on Grow to Scale Your Business podcast. We'd like to talk, or you know what, even if you just want to chat and share some war stories with business, I'm always happy to hear from other employers and other business owners. It's always fun.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna put your link to the LinkedIn in the description below as well, so people can reach you. And that way they can grow their business, they can scale their business, and they can start operating machinery that was sitting and collecting dust in their warehouse for months.
Yes, do not, guys, okay, to my fellow business owners, okay, do not let your business suffer because you can't keep staff. There is a very real solution here. And it's something that, even if you don't go with it in the end, it's something that is worthwhile exploring. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to me, to get to exhaust all of your options, because I would hate to see you guys working so much in your business that you can't work on your business. That's not where your value is. Your value is working on your business, not being the server to your restaurant. You can do better than that. So keep it open as an option and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate your time and appreciate all the information that you provided to our listeners. And reach out to Justin because he's the way for you to move to the next level and find your employees.